You think you know what a CIA operative does. You've seen it in movies. The guy in the perfectly fitted suit, she jumping off rooftops, speaking 6 languages, seducing foreign ministers at cocktail parties, and blowing things up before dinner. That person doesn't exist. And the real CIA, like the actual agency with real people doing real jobs, is so much stranger, so much more fascinating, and honestly so much more terrifying than anything Hollywood ever invented. Because the real CIA doesn't run on action heroes. It runs on a hierarchy, a ladder of levels, each one with a completely different job, a completely different life, and a completely different kind of danger. And most people have never heard of any of them. So today we're going all the way from the bottom of that ladder to the very top. Every level, every real job, no movie nonsense. Let's start where everyone starts. The bottom, the intelligence analyst. This is the person nobody pictures when they think CIA, and that's exactly the point. Intelligence analysts are not in the field. They are not running agents in foreign countries. They are sitting at a desk, often in Langley, Virginia, reading everything: signals intercepts, satellite imagery, foreign news reports, field cables, economic data, social media patterns. Their job is to take a mountain of raw, disconnected information and turn it into something the President of the United States can actually use. Every morning, someone at this level contributes to a document called the President's Daily Brief, a classified summary of the most critical threats facing America that day. Analysts typically enter at GS7 to GS9 on the federal pay scale, meaning they start around the salary of a junior accountant. But the weight of what they do, that's anything but junior. A missed signal at this level doesn't get you fired. It gets people killed. Then there's the person who goes where the analyst can only read about, the case officer. This is the most iconic real CIA role, and it is nothing like James Bond. A case officer's job is brutally simple to describe and almost impossible to execute. They go to a foreign country, usually under a fake identity, and they find people with access to secrets. Then they build relationships with those people. Deep, personal, sometimes years-long relationships. They are trained psychologists disguised as diplomats, businessmen, aid workers, or journalists. Their entire skill set is human persuasion. Once they've identified a target and, say, a senior official inside a hostile government, they spend months, sometimes years, earning that person's trust. Then they recruit them as an asset, an informant who hands over classified information in exchange for money, ideology, or protection. One former case officer described standing in an isolated alleyway holding a bag with $500,000 in cash, handing it to a source. No backup, no cover, just tradecraft and nerve. If something goes wrong at this level, you don't call for help, you improvise, or you disappear. Above the case officer is the person who runs the whole show in one country, the chief of station. Every country where the CIA operates has a CIA station, usually embedded inside the U.S. Embassy, hidden behind a diplomatic cover. The chief of station is the commander of that entire operation. Every asset being run in that country, every case officer working on the ground, every covert operation in progress, it all flows through this one person. The chief of station reports directly back to CIA headquarters in Washington and is also quietly one of the most powerful Americans in any foreign capital. Foreign intelligence services often know exactly who the chief of station is. They just pretend they don't. This is where diplomacy and espionage fully merge. A chief of station is simultaneously managing relationships with foreign spy agencies, overseeing covert operations, briefing the U.S. ambassador, and making real-time decisions that can shape geopolitical outcomes. The pressure is extraordinary, and if an operation goes wrong on their watch, it's their career that ends, or in hostile countries, potentially much more. But there's another level of case officer that the CIA rarely talks about, the paramilitary operations officer. If the standard case officer is a scalpel, precise, subtle, invisible, the paramilitary operations officer is something else entirely. These officers are recruited almost exclusively from special operations forces, Navy SEALs, Army Delta Force, Marine Raiders. They go through an additional classified training pipeline and emerge as the CIA's most dangerous field operatives. Their job is not to recruit assets and collect intelligence. Their job is to plan and execute covert paramilitary operations in places where the U.S. military officially does not exist. They were the first Americans on the ground in Afghanistan after 9/11, before a single soldier deployed. They operated in Iraq, Syria, Libya, and in conflict zones that have never been publicly acknowledged. They answer to the Special Activities Center, the most classified unit inside the CIA. The Wall of Honor at CIA headquarters, the memorial for officers killed in the line of duty. is disproportionately filled with names from this level. Most of those names cannot be publicly released. And then there's the person at the very top of the operational chain. And then there is the level that the CIA will never officially confirm exists. Black Ops. No job posting, no official title, no paper trail. This is the category of operations so sensitive that even inside the CIA, only a handful of people know they are happening. We are talking about targeted killings, regime destabilization, election interference, and operations in countries where America is officially at peace. The officers who execute these missions do not exist on any organizational chart. If they are captured, the U.S. government will deny any knowledge of them, not as a formality, but as official policy. What is publicly known is this: the CIA's Special Activities Center has carried out operations that have never been acknowledged, in countries that have never been named, against targets whose identities remain classified decades later. Former CIA directors have openly admitted that some operations will stay secret forever. Not for 5 years, not for 20, forever. So, when you watch the news and something happens in a foreign country that makes no logical sense, and nobody claims responsibility, and the story quietly disappears within 48 hours, now you know which level of this ladder was probably involved: the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. This is the only position in this entire hierarchy that is publicly known, publicly confirmed, and Senate confirmed. The director is appointed by the president. They attend National Security Council meetings. They brief the president directly. They manage an agency of tens of thousands of people with a classified budget running into the billions. But here's what most people don't know. The director of the CIA is often not a spy. Many have been politicians, military generals, or former members of Congress. The actual operational machinery of the CIA, the case officers, the chiefs of station, the paramilitary teams, is managed internally by career officers. The director sets the mission, the career officers execute it. And somewhere in between those two worlds, in the gray space between diplomacy and violence, between intelligence and action, the real work of the CIA happens every single day. In cities you've visited, in buildings you've walked past, carried out by people whose names you will never know.